So we make theatre, and what we wanted to do is that we did not want to be a theatre company who make work with disabled artists. We didn't actually want to be just this rather strange, esoteric theatre company who did things a bit differently. What we wanted to do was to be mainstream. We wanted to be recognised for making brilliant theatre. So what we did was quite cheeky. We decided that we wanted to work with some of the best theatre companies working in the UK. And so we set out to choose companies whose work we really, really admired. Now, one of these companies is a company called Punch Drunk. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with Punch Drunk. They're based in London, but they actually have shows that run both in New York and in Shanghai. And they make something called immersive theatre. And immersive theatre is theatre up close. So they will take a building and they will transform it, and an audience enters the building and they make their own journey. And they meet various characters on the course of their journey. And they make their journey completely alone, and they are free to wander, and they try and work out exactly what the story is from the journey that they make. So we did lots of workshops with Punch Drunk, and we came up with the idea of wanting to create a world underneath the streets of the city of Cardiff. And we created a world of where everything that we lose goes to. What happens when we lose the sock in the washing machine? Where does that sock go to? What happens when we lose our baby teeth? What happens when we lose our memory? What happens to all those things that are lost in translation? What happens when we lose our heart? So we created a fantasy world of where all these lost things went to and where they were meant to, what happened to them and the story of them. Now, we promoted this show as a co-production between Hijinx, a tiny little theatre company in Wales, and Punch Drunk, a big, glitzy, international show. And Punch Drunk have a huge fan base. And people came literally from all over the world to come and see this show. Punch Drunk, they've made a new show, quick, let's go to Cardiff and see it. No one had heard of Hijinx. They came to see the show, and it had all the hallmarks. It looked like a Punch Drunk show. The only thing that was different is that it had lots of actors in it who obviously had autism or Down syndrome or Williams syndrome. And most of that audience had never, ever before seen an actor with a learning disability performing. And they were amazed. They were completely amazed. The show completely sold out in 2014, was so successful that we decided to make a sequel in 2015, moved into a bigger space, developed the show, and sold it out all over again. So this was something that was working for us. Now, we had found a completely new audience who were accepting actors with learning disabilities as professionals. So then, we decided to do something new. We were very attracted by, again, an international company called Blind Summit. Blind Summit are a puppet company. We'd never worked with puppets before. We had no idea how to do it. So we asked them to come and spend some time with us and teach us how to do banraku puppetry. So banraku puppetry is where the puppet is manipulated by 3 puppeteers. And we had great fun with them. And out of the workshops, we created a number of characters. And one of these characters that we really liked was a puppet with no face, no clothes, whom we called Fred. Well, in fact, one of our learning disabled actors called Fred. And Fred tells the story of a puppet who comes out of a box, who doesn't want to be a puppet. So you see the connection? You see that this is like somebody with a learning disability, somebody who's put in a box which has a label on it. He comes out of the box and he doesn't want to be a puppet, and he doesn't want to be manipulated by people who are not puppets, who are telling him and are moving him around and telling him what his life should be. So from this concept came this show. So Fred is a puppet show where Fred, though, refuses to be a victim. He has a foul mouth. He swears a lot. He's very, very funny. He has a terribly, terribly bad temper. But Fred, most of all, wants to be normal. He says what he wants is he wants a girlfriend, he wants a job, and he wants somewhere to live. The show opened very quietly in a tiny little theatre in a village in Wales. By 3 or 4 hours before the show, we hadn't sold a single ticket. So we went out into this village and we posted tickets through all the letterboxes, inviting people to come to it. So on that opening night, we made no money. We just lost money. But we had a full theatre. And the village loved it. They absolutely loved the show. They laughed really loudly, and they all went onto social media. The next night, we'd moved to another village, and the show did really well. We had about a 50% capacity. Theatre was half full. They all went onto social media. The next night, we moved into a bigger theatre, and the show sold out. We then took it up to the Edinburgh Festival, and we promoted it as a co-production between Little Hijinx and Blind Summit, this amazing puppetry company. And everybody came to see the show because they thought they were coming to a Blind Summit show. First night, about 50% capacity. Second night, sold out. It ran then for another 29 performances. Every single performance sold out. Word of mouth and having a hook, getting that audience in because they actually thought they were coming to Blind Summit. So by the end of that Edinburgh Festival, Hijinx started having a following. We had managed to get in through the back door, and audiences now were really, really accepting learning disabled performers as professional actors. And I'm going to show you now a little clip from this. So this little show that we had to give away tickets for the opening night has now visited 16 countries worldwide, 67 different cities across the world. It wasn't a very expensive show to make, but it's a show that's completely changed the fortunes for our learning disabled actors. So we next then wanted to experiment with a mainstream company in Wales. So there's a theatre company with a very, very good reputation called Theatr Clwyd. And we wanted to try and experiment with making a piece of work which was film and theatre incorporated. We also wanted to make a piece of work about mental health, because we know that a lot of people with intellectual disabilities actually have complex mental health issues. And Hijinx is a company that doesn't want to shy away from difficult subjects to talk about. So we made a piece of work which we called a dystopian musical called Boho. Like the other shows that we made, 50% of the casts are without disabilities and 50% are neurodivergent. So I've got a short film to show you here, which is gives you a little bit of a taste of what this show was.
Hello, Mr. Jones. We are very pleased to meet you. We would like to ask you a few questions. What are your skills?
Strong.
What are you doing? How did you get here? Have you met your targets? Are you anxious? Can you wash yourself?
Young,
Do
fun,
you have trouble sleeping?
gorgeous. Young,
When did you last cry?
gorgeous. Young,
How many friends do you have?
gorgeous.
Are you good at it? Are you good at work?
Young, strong,
Are you good? How many friends do you have?
strong.
So this was a
If
show.
anyone asks, you just tell them it's a little slip. Just a little slip.
So this was a show about society's expectations. Many of our actors told us that every year they had to go to the doctors to demonstrate that they still had a disability. In order to get government money, welfare money, what we called social benefit, in order to get the benefit money, they had to go to a doctor's and to be asked some terrible questions about whether they could wash themselves, whether they could go to the toilet by themselves, whether they could make a cup of tea, in order to prove that they were still had Down syndrome or still had autism, in order for them to get money for the next financial year. And so we wanted to turn this up on its head and just question all the expectations that are faced, that everybody has to face, but particularly those who are, have a disability. So using this model that seemed to work with us about working with companies who already had a fan base, we wanted to work with a very funny company called Spy Monkey. They're a clown company. So we had done immersive theatre, we'd done puppetry, and we wanted now to focus on clowning. We know that actually many people have a fear of learning disabled performers because they don't feel that they're allowed to laugh at people with a disability. They feel that somehow that would be disrespectful. What we wanted to do was to destroy the idea of an audience saying, "Oh, isn't he doing well? Isn't it lovely? Isn't it lovely that she's given an opportunity to be a performer? Isn't that nice? We wanted the audience both to get up close, but also to be able to laugh with our actors. So we created a clowning show, which we called The Flop. Now this is a show, again, because Hijinx doesn't like to shy away from difficult topics. We wanted to make a show about sex. We wanted to, because again, a lot of our actors talked about being an adult and how difficult it is as an adult with a learning disability to have sexual relationships, and how damaging it can be when they are made like children, treated like children as grown adults. So we found a story set in 18th century France about a young couple who are married but have never consummated their marriage because they don't know what to do, because nobody has ever told them about the sexual act. This show we took to Edinburgh Festival in 2018, and guess what? The same thing happened. It attracted a big audience because Spy Monkey had a big following, but now also Hijinx was beginning to have a big following as well. So business was very good. And again, like all our shows, 50% of the performers are professional actors without a disability, and 3 of them, the other 50%, are performers without. So here we have Jonathan, who has Down syndrome, Adam, who has autism and is a very fine euphonium player, and Ted, who has Williams syndrome. And I think we've got a small clip.
This is the story of the Marquis de Longueuil. Right now he's well respected, but he won't be for long. Yes, but isn't that French for the flop, 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 the flop.
Oops. And then the show we're just about to make, we go into rehearsals on Thursday next week, is a show that we're developing with a theatre company called Frantic Assembly. Now, some of you might be familiar with a very successful show that was produced by the National Theatre of Great Britain, which was called The Curious Incident of a Dog in the Night. And the director of that show, which has toured around the world many times, is actually directing this next show for us. It's our most ambitious piece to date because we are making this show with 2 other companies who work inclusively in Europe. One of them is a dance company in Seville called Danza Mobile, who train actors to dancers to a very, very high standard. And the other one is an Italian company called La Teatro La Ribalta in Bolzano in northern Italy. And it's been a very complex project to work with 3 other companies, but I think it's going to be a very exciting show. As I say, we haven't started rehearsals yet. What we have done, though, is that we've undertaken some research and development. So we've had some workshops, we've brought over the Spanish and the Italian partners to Wales, and we've experimented with some ideas. So I've got a short film to show you.
We began by assembling this incredibly diverse group of performers from Wales, Spain, Italy, all sorts of ages and shapes and backgrounds, and people with and without disabilities. And we embarked on finding a common language. How would we work? How would we connect? That was incredibly exciting because you see this passion, you see this drive, and I could also see the risk in making that gesture, the risk in stepping out into the light and performing. Is the world ready to hear what you're trying to say? This is what's happening in the room all the time. People are making these gestures, trying to be understood, and it's only the generosity of others that's connecting and making that spark and creating that electricity in the room. That's what performance is as well. When you step out on the stage and you meet that audience, that's where the excitement and that's where the risk is. I thought, that's what we all do. We all do that in our lives. We want the feeling of connection, and that comes in many, many ways. And that's what we've been exploring, all the different ways we ache to connect. I'm making a piece of work that feels universal, but also incredibly intimate. It's all about that need that we have to know we exist. And sometimes we only know that by reaching out and touching someone else. So that is a huge part of what this show is about. It's about validation. So when you walk forward in the light and you reach out and that audience sees you and accepts you, you know you're alive. I think this is a very important project. I think it's really important to be making this work in this way with such a diverse cast who are standing on stage and making themselves known and are making a huge statement. But it's more than that. I think they make the greatest statement by completely confounding the expectations of the audience and offering you something that is brave and honest, but also utterly exhilarating and beautiful. That's the way I'll make the best show, and I think that's the way I'll make the best statement, and certainly show why I think this is important. And I've got every confidence that these performers are going to blow your socks off.
So if you're in Cardiff in the middle of February, we hope that you might come and join us for the world premiere, but you might actually catch it when it comes to Hong Kong as well, which are in 2020. So those are our theatre shows, and they seem to be in demand a great deal. We spend a lot of our time on the road now, which is very surprising because 5 years ago we were touring round village halls in Wales, and now we find ourselves in airports most of the year. Now, besides these big touring shows that we're making, we also make something which we call Hijinx pods. Now, a pod really is a performance experience opportunity for all our 70 actors. So we create what we call street interventions. We like to go and to reach audiences who don't traditionally buy tickets to go to the theatre to see something. We want to confront the shopper or the football supporter with theatre in unusual pieces of theatre in unusual places. So we create these interventions which we call pods. Now this one we call sleepwalkers. It's a very, very simple idea, is that dozens of people are sleepwalking through a town centre or a football stadium. They're all asleep and they walk and then they will fall asleep on a policeman or on a car or in a shop window or on a park bench. And then an alarm clock goes off and they realise, they wake up, they see that they're wearing night clothes and they're very embarrassed and they run off. And this is a pod that we have taken all over Europe. What we'll do is we'll go to a town in Germany and we will work with a local community of people with disabilities, and we work with them for 2 or 3 days. We make the show with them and then we'll tour it around their town, out in the streets. And as you can see, people are both surprised by it and greatly enjoy it. This is another pod, which it's about 3 hairdressers, a rock hairdresser, a punk hairdresser, and a classical hairdresser, who they go into shopping streets and they give people, members of the general public, they give them haircuts. It's a physical theatre piece, there's no language, and all the performers have a learning disability. This is one of our new pods, which is a very sweet, touching two-hander called Crossing. It's really about migration. It's about 2 people who have no home, who meet on a park bench, 2 strangers, and it's about the connection that they make. So it's a show that we've only just made and we'll be going out to parks all over the UK and Europe this summer.